Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about a couple of essential mods for Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl in order to have just a better experience with the game. There are some mods that do make certain aspects of the game easier, in particular with the mutants, that I could also recommend, but these are just quality of life mods that I am going to be talking about over here. So the first mod, and all of these are linked in the description below, gives you a maximum weight limit of 200. This may or may not work. Some people have reported that. From what I could tell, it did work, but I'm also using it in conjunction with something else, because I'm not just using a maximum weight of 200, because even with 200, you will have a lot of stuff. Another mod that I'm using changes all consumables, basically, including ammunition, to have 0 weight. Now, I understand that this is not realistic. I get that. But you also gotta understand that by default, you spend a significant amount of time in the game traipsing around. In fact, there are main story objectives. As someone who has finished this game, this is a save before the end game, just before the end game. But as someone who's finished the game, you'll be traveling a lot. And that's just inherently something that's going to happen, even if you're using this. Now, if you don't want to waste your time micromanaging your inventory all the fucking time, I would recommend this. Yes, you will end up with a ridiculous number of consumables. That is true, but it's better than just, having to ditch like 2/3 or 3/4 even of your entire inventory after pretty much in every excursion. Because one of the problems, like the reason I recommend these mods, is like one of the main ways to make money in this game is to pick up guns that enemies drop. Now, if they're in yellow condition or they're in regular condition, you can sell them. And same with armor. That's the principal way. Consumables, like, they cost a lot to ammo costs a lot to purchase, but it's very, very crap in terms of, like, its price. So it's actually not worth carrying ammo with you. And what's also ridiculous is, like, the thing that actually weighs a lot by default is food. Something you couldn't care less about because of the one thing that you have, a huge amount of, very plentiful around the world, and is very cheap from stores, is food. So it's like just tedium of inventory management that you do have to deal with. Now, a third thing that I would recommend as a mod would be related to equipment durability. By default, equipment wears down very, very quickly. This is not like a case like in other games where you might have a repair kit. Maybe they should add a repair kit, but you don't have that here. So you either end up with armor or guns that are very low durability. You can still use them, but it's not particularly great. And also, on top of that, you can't sell stuff that's broken. So yellow, damaged, you can sell equipment that's damaged. I'm not sure if I'm gonna find anything over here. Yeah. But you cannot sell, and I do find it ridiculous, you cannot sell guns or equipment in general that's broken. I mean, you can still use it. Keep in mind that, like, just as an example, I go, let's say I go over here, I take this pistol, right? I pull out the pistol over here. Yes, in my jam, it has less accuracy, it has lower stats. It still fucking functions. That is still ridiculous. So you have mods for weight. 2 mods recommended for weight. 1 for inventory management. One for weapon durability. And the final one has to do with repair costs. So the way repair of equipment is, by default, it's ridiculously expensive. How expensive? Well,
let's see what else you can find.
Gun, like, it's so expensive that you might not want to use some special weapons at all. And you will want to probably sell a bunch of equipment and constantly swap guns, which, by the way, adds to the tedium by default because you have attachments, you have upgrades. In fact, upgrading your gun is kind of pointless, at least your early game guns, partly because it's so expensive to repair them, and partly because you'll find much better quality guns all around the world. And yes, some guns are worth upgrading, but only a handful. Like, there are some guns that gain a benefit from upgrades, and you do feel it. So, for instance, this particular baby, at short range, one magazine of this drops pretty much any human enemy in the game. Like, you look at this guy, dead. Dead. You get the point that I'm to make over here. Or very quick, if I'm doing headshots, right? And I don't know. That's what I mean. Like, this thing obliterates him. This is something worth upgrading because you can increase its armor piercing, can increase all that. Other guns, not necessarily so. Some shotguns, some other things, absolutely. But only a handful of pieces of gear. So there is a mod that does reduce the repair cost. Because basically, by default, repair is calculated based on the value of the gun itself, not on the value of the gun if you were to sell it. So for instance, if I go over here, for instance, as an example, and you know, I look to sell a gun, you know, I might get 8K. But
if
obviously,
you're too stingy, don't come crying to.
Obviously, if we look at this gun, it's 42,000 value. And if we look at the repair of the mod, is much like, keep in mind, it's still gonna be thousands to repair a gun, like, you know, Grom, S14, all that.
Let's see what else you can find.
It's still gonna be an expensive affair. But it does reduce, you can reduce repair costs to 0 with certain mods. I do think having a repair cost is fine, but I would personally probably reduce it all the way to 10%. But the one I have linked reduces the cost to 25% of the default level. Which, by the way, you're still going to spend a significant portion of your cash on that if you're interested. But the default repair cost also makes it so that, oh, let's say you're going out in the world and you pick up a gun that's damaged even. Not even in the red, not broken, but damaged. And you may want to sell it, right? Well, repairing it is never worth it. You'll always lose a lot of money. Even with a quarter price, I'm just barely above breaking even if I were to repair, you know, this particular gun. So, just something worth pointing out in regards to that. Those are some mods I'd recommend. There is a final mod that I can talk about, and it's one related to the console commands here. And there's a bunch of console commands, but one of them does give you, like, there's a couple of useful functions over there. A lot of useful functions. The game is buggy right now. So, you know, areas that don't open, you know, gates that don't open when they should, quests that don't complete, game crashing when you're supposed to do some kind of puzzle, jumping puzzle with anomalies, game literally crashing on me. There are a couple of commands, like there's a ghost command, which basically means you don't have collision and you're more or less flying. Then there's a command to go back to normal, and then there's one that gives you a lot of speed. Those are the ones that I use because, yeah, you have a lot of a huge distance to cover. Like, one quest might take you from, like, there was one particular side quest, not a main quest, but there's also plenty of main quests as well that do this. But I think the most egregious example was a quest that took me from roughly this area to go kill some enemies here and then here, or roughly around this area. from one side of the map to another. Now you can say, well, you can always use a guide to transport yourself. Even with a guide, you still have a huge freaking distance to cover. And it's not like it's not like these guides are so very close apart, and it's not like you're still talking about kilometers to cover on foot. Which, keep in mind, this is related to the weight, because the more weight you have on you, the slower, the slower you'll be. So, like, you pick up weight, you start going over and over the weight limit, percentage-wise, you end up in a bit of a problem. And by the way, I can carry 200 weight, but I think, like, what's going on over here is, like, it shows me, well, I am a bit encumbered, right? At 91. So, point is, a lot of these issues do make the game more frustrating. Keep in mind, this is not a short game. It's a long game, very long game in quite a few ways. Does it drag on? To some extent. Is it an awesome game at the same time? Sure. I do certainly hope that some patches will improve this situation, but for now, I'd recommend these kind of mods. So, like, there's, mod that allows the console commands, and it has a list of console commands where you can find the speed. I'll post the ones I use, the speed one, the ghosting one, all that, but there's a whole bunch of things. And I'd firmly recommend that one, because literally, without that, I would not have been able to beat the game, because it literally broke so many times in the main quest that I had to literally either use it to go through walls or, use it for various things. But mainly to just get through certain areas. Like, literally, in the final mission of the game, I would not have been able to complete it by default, because without ghosting for walls, because it was literally crashing when I was trying to do it normally, because you're basically supposed to jump after for a certain point, and that just didn't work out. That's all I had to say. Christine signing out, and next up I think I'll be doing a very early game guide on, just how to get things going in the zone. With vanilla, but I'd firmly recommend these mods.